Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I'm Ken Smith, just an old guy having fun with trains, and today's video is about a question that I actually get asked quite a bit, and that is, what type of paintbrushes do you use? Now, that's a great question because there's thousands of types of paintbrushes that are out there, so which one do you use? Which one's right for water-based paints? Which one's right for solvent-based paints? Should I use synthetic brushes? Should I use Sable brushes or natural hair brushes? Well, I'm going to answer those questions and more, so let's get at it.
Now, choosing the right brush is kind of like picking the right tool for the job. You know, an auto mechanic just doesn't use an open-ended wrench for every job, and neither should a modeler use just one brush. It depends on several factors. 1, the paint you're using. 2, the surface you're applying it to. And 3, how detailed do you want the finished item to look like? That's really it. Paint you're using, surface you're applying it to, and how detailed you want it. From the 1970s until around 2012, my go-to paint was Floquil. If you know, you know. Floquil wasn't just paint, it was practically a building material. And for those of you who remember Diosol and the legendary smell of xylene, well, you also remember the health risks involved. When I moved from Colorado to Tennessee in 2019, I gave away practically 75 bottles of Floquil to a young hobbyist that was just getting started in model railroading. Now, I mention that because Floquil had their own unique set of brushes that could tolerate the solvents that were in their paint and their thinners.
These days, I primarily use water-based paints with some enamels. So let's talk about the brushes that I use today, starting with synthetics.
Synthetic brushes are my go-to brush for most day-to-day modeling tasks. They're affordable, durable, and they're easy to find. I avoid the cheap dollar store brushes as their quality is inconsistent and they often don't hold up well anyways. The glue binding the bristles can melt when exposed to solvents, and that leads to a stray brush hair or two in your work you just got done painting, and I don't find that very ideal. The thing about synthetic brushes is that they are a great workhorse for applying a lot of paint to a large surface area without leaving massive brush strokes. An example of how I did just that was painting this Tyco sandhouse. I used a water-based paint straight from the bottle and painted it using a synthetic brush. I have a full-featured video of this, and I'll put the link down in the description. I have a variety of synthetic brushes that I use, again, depending on the task. If you're looking for some suggestions, I like the Saks Optimum series. These are affordable brushes, but you also must be prepared to toss that brush away once it starts to wear out. Another option is the Fine Touch set of brushes that you can get at Hobby Lobby. I believe that that's their brand. These are very cost effective and won't last near as long as the Saks Optimum, but at less than $1 a brush when you buy the 11-piece set, you have a very inexpensive brush set, especially if you're just starting out. Just remember to toss them out once the tips start to wear. Another brush line that I like using is the Princeton Select series. These brushes last longer than the Fine Touch brushes I just mentioned, but not quite as long as the Saks Optimum. These can be found at Michael's and many other online artist supply houses. I would say that they are a mid-range price synthetic brush. Let me just say this about tossing brushes out when they start wearing out. For me, nothing is more frustrating than painting a model and then having to grab a pair of tweezers to pull out the stray bristle that just dislodged itself and then trying to fix that area because the paint has already started to set. Or the bristle that has started to pull away from the tip is now leaving its own signature pinstripe. Just toss the brush out and stop fighting it. Now, that being said, consider saving some of them when it comes to perhaps applying certain types of glue or even paint to areas where you want something to look a bit messy. I know that sounds a bit contradictory, but those spent brushes can be used for applying light washes like diluted India ink and alcohol ink, or even certain chalks. So consider saving and maybe even trimming the tips off.
I bet by now your head is probably spinning. Oh my goodness, there's dozens of brushes that are out there, and that's literally the case. But now let's talk about natural hair or sable brushes. These types of brushes, believe it or not, are the backbone or the top shelf or the top tier types of brushes that are out there. And I still use them today.
Believe it or not, I still have several Flocal red sable brushes. The ones you're looking at right now are probably 25 years old, if not older, and they still have life in them. You will never get that kind of lifespan out of the very best synthetic brush, no matter what you do to take care of it. Currently, a great option, and they are pricey, and I do own one, but it's Winsor & Newton brushes. Their red sable brush is a fantastic brush, but again, it's very pricey, and it's not unusual to pay over $30 just for one brush. But if the detail is what you want, this is the brush for you. This is an example of how I load a brush and paint. Now, I'm working with water-based paints, and I will tell you that I treat this very similar to the way most watercolorists would do a watercolor painting. I constantly rinse, then I load the brush, then I apply the paint, then I rinse, load the brush, apply the paint. And I'm constantly doing that, and the reason for it is that, one, it obviously is going to keep the brush clean, but more importantly, it just makes life really easy when you're applying paint in just about any scenario. So you can see me as I'm applying paint to a larger area like these window frames for the building. But then also when I get up close to a small window, I'm doing the same thing.
And this is one of those never, 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 ever do to your paintbrush. Now, I'm obviously going to show you what I mean by never, never, but I'm not doing it to my paintbrush. I'm doing it to the other side. I see this all the time, and I think at some juncture, we've all been guilty about this, but you don't clean your paintbrush by sticking it in here and twirling it. That's not how you clean a paintbrush. Don't ever do that. You might as well just throw the thing away at that juncture.
For water-based paints, I use warm water and just a little dish soap mixed together. I'm constantly swirling the brush and trying to circulate the warm water and dish soap on the bristles. And then eventually I will rinse that all off. And then next I tap the brush dry and I let it rest. I like to let them be suspended so that the air gets a chance to circulate around the bristles. For solvent-based paints, I use turpentine or mineral spirits, with the later being my preferred method. Again, I go through the same process. I just swirl things around, then I kind of tap dry, and I let it rest.
So there you have it. That's just a quick dive into brushes. Whether you're a seasoned modeler or you're just starting out, there's a lot of options that are out there. But if you want to know what I use today for almost everything, there they are. Believe it or not, it is my favorite set of brushes that I go to for water-based paints. It's the Princeton series that I talked about very early on in the video. They're available at just about every art supply store. They're fantastic brushes to use, and that will get you a good set of brushes at a very cost-effective entry level. So check them out. Again, like everything else, it's a tool, and it's what works for you. Have a wonderful day, and you all be blessed.